All right, Frank Bernardo here for LowKick MMA. Today we're going to be breaking down UFC 274, the upcoming event headlined by Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Joining me today is one of our lead writers over at LowKick MMA, Nikhil Sharma. How are you, man? Thanks for coming on.
Hey man, I'm super excited for the fight coming up next. This is one of the fights that I've been looking forward to this whole year, but even before it got announced. And not only the fight, the whole card is so stacked with talent. I feel like we're in for a really good night.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's got a good variety of high-level fights, exciting prospects, and a couple of grizzled veterans in the mix. So, yeah, it should be a good one. Let's get started with the fight at the very top of the card, the one that, I mean, if there's ever been a headline fight, this is it. It's Charles Oliveira, the lightweight champion, taking on Justin Gaethje, the highlight himself. Incredible fight, incredible matchup. How do you see it going?
I feel like the big thing about Oliveira is that he's really underrated as a striker. And that's
Mm.
not a bad thing. That's a testament to his abilities as a grappler. He's such an excellent grappler that people look over his striking game. So I feel like he can hit Justin Gaethje with those shots that he doesn't see coming. He's very slick with his movement. Will he be able to take Justin Gaethje down? Or will he get his back? Those are the two biggest questions I feel like I have going into this fight. What are your thoughts, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been saying the sort of red flags about Gaethje is the fact that he was submitted by Khabib Nurmagomedov in that title unification bout, I believe 2020 now. But the main issue is there a wrestler of Khabib's caliber in the lightweight division right now? Someone with the level of takedowns that he has? Because I don't think Oliveira has that. I mean, even against Poirier, I mean, he did get the fight to the floor, but the eventual finishing sequence was pretty much still on the feet. He caught the back in the third round. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like those first two rounds, Justin Gaethje is going to deliver such hellacious damage to Oliveira, to the legs, to the midsection, to the head. He loves to mix it up and is so good at doing it. Will Oliveira be able to stick in there long enough to sort of wait it out and catch his moment? I don't know. I'm a huge Oliveira fan, but as much as I hate to say it, I'm leaning towards Gaethje for this one, probably inside the first three rounds.
Yeah, that's a fair analysis, I would say. Gaethje is known for chopping his opponent's legs with those low
Mm.
kicks. But one interesting point, if you look at both those guys, is they're both very good at managing distance.
Mm.
With the stance that Oliveira has, this is a question that I have on my mind. I'm so curious to see how it goes down. How will he manage the low kicks? Will he get hit? Because I don't feel like he can take more than 5 of those and continue at the level he wants to. He obviously will be looking to get more control time, Oliveira. But like you mentioned, I don't feel like he's at the same level Khabib was. And I don't know if this plays into some sort of bad blood between the two, but Gaethje did mention that Oliveira tends to quit, or there was a time when he did. Nowadays, I don't feel like he would do that, but we have seen he's hittable. And if you're hittable and you get hit by someone who hits like a truck in Gaethje, you're going down. So I feel like the big thing, like you mentioned, Frank, is wait out those first two rounds, get Gaethje just to survive him, don't get hit like that. And Gaethje gets hit too, man. Again, if you look at Oliveira, you would not expect him to knock down or knock out Michael Chandler, but he did that. So he's very slick. It's the shots that you don't see coming that hurt you. I feel like he can land those against Gaethje, but he needs to avoid getting hit. And if he survives the first two rounds, Gaethje needs to keep his cardio level up, keeps his pressure game up. Otherwise, he's losing this fight.
Yeah, they're just both such dangerous fighters. That's the thing. It makes it very hard to put a read on this. But yeah, I do think also just considering the way that Oliveira stands in that sort of high guard, almost like traditional Muay Thai stance, I feel like does make his legs so susceptible to those leg kicks. And I mean, has he fought someone with the level and brutality of leg kicks that Justin Gaethje possesses? I don't think he has. Probably because Gaethje is the best leg kicker in the division. I do reckon that could just chew him up. And as soon as that front leg is destabilized, from there it's just a downhill battle, especially against Gaethje, who just knows to fight that sort of fight. Oliveira does hit hard, like you mentioned. He proved it against Chandler, but I would say Chandler as tough and durable as he is, he probably isn't as durable as Justin Gaethje, especially now that Gaethje sort of started to implement a more well, it's more strategic the way he fights. He's no longer the same sort of just madman that would go in there just thirsting after the blood of his opponent. He's fighting to win now rather than fighting to fight. So yeah, yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I lean towards Gaethje in this one. Have you got an official prediction?
Again, it's gonna be very hard for me. My heart does want Justin Gaethje to win this fight, but I don't know if he can. Charles Oliveira is really good. You know, the biggest thing here is either way, we are in for a very exciting outcome, because if Charles Oliveira does lose this fight, it's going to be by a knockout. It's not going to be by decision or submission, which means Gaethje is going to call him a quitter again. And if Gaethje wins the fight, Oliveira proves the point that he's the champion, he's the man. So yeah, I do see it being finished. I am kind of leaning towards Oliveira just because I feel like he will come up with a game plan to survive the first 2 rounds and then tap out Justin Gaethje. Even though my heart says Gaethje, brain says Oliveira.
Fair enough. I mean, I hope you're right. I do hope you're right. Oliveira is one of the most unique sort of champions we've had in a long time, and people have counted him out so many times that, yeah, get him in there. Let's get a win over Gaethje and then go fight Islam Makhachev, which is one for the future, but that would be absolutely sensational. Let's move to the co-main event, though. Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. It's the rematch. I'm not sure how many years in the making now. Oh, there you go. Yeah, for the inaugural story title, I believe it was a long time ago. And yeah, of course, Esparza won via rear naked choke. But going into this fight, Namajunas is now the heavy favorite. She has really developed her game, training alongside Justin Gaethje under the tutelage of Trevor Whitman. Can you see Esparza winning this one at all? Like, is there any avenues for her to have success against Rose?
I feel like a way Esparza can win this fight is by maintaining her ground control time, outscoring Namajunas by getting that ground control time in. But can she do that? Because Namajunas is really good off her back. Even when she gets taken down, she's not going to stay there. You can't keep Rose down. That's the big problem. And you alluded to the first match, but I don't know how much we can take from it, right? The Ultimate Fighter season 20 finale, Rose did lose the fight, but if you look at it, she kind of gassed out, and that's how she like faded away during the contest, and then she got tapped out in the 3rd round. But I don't know how much we can take from it. They're not the same fighters. It's been 8 years, you know? So in your head, do you feel like Rose will go for a striking heavy game plan, or how do you feel like she'll be looking for a win here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Esparza is a wrestler first and foremost. You know, at this level, everyone's competent in both striking and grappling, but yeah, the Rose will have a clear advantage in the striking department, which is why I imagine Esparza is gonna attempt to implement her own wrestling heavy game plan. It's an interesting one. I just feel like, I mean, Rose is only 5'5", but Esparza's 5'1". There's a big difference in size there. I mean, in all honesty, if there was an atomweight division, Esparza would probably be ruling that right now. That 105-pound division, but there never will be, or at least not anytime soon. Which means you have undersized fighters like Esparza fighting the likes of Namajunas. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I struggle to see how almost anyone in that division can dethrone Rose. I think even though her last fight with Whaley was close, it also allowed her to demonstrate how much she has developed her game, because there were extended grappling sequences in that fight, and Whaley's going out there and training with Henry Cejudo, one of the best wrestlers to ever grace the octagon. And Namajunas is still holding her own. She did drop rounds, but I just think she's only getting better. Whereas I feel like Esparza, I don't want to discredit her as a fighter, because I do think she's exceptional, and she showed it in some of her more recent fights. The beating she put on Yan Chanan was absolutely horrific. But if she can't implement that wrestling, I don't really know what she has for Rose.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you look at Rosa's fight against Andrade, you know, Andrade was someone who really brought the wrestling in for Namajunas. And when you alluded to her last fight with Weili Zhang, which was close, yeah, and she did train with Henry Cejudo, she managed to secure 5 takedowns on Rose, but only 3 minute ground control time. Do you know how insane that is as a wrestler? Like, and then Namajunas is also a submission artist. She can tap you out. She is very good off her back. It's not like you can just take her down and do whatever you want with it. You need to still have more of a game plan. And yes, Esparza right now in her career, she is in that position where she can do that. I'm not counting her out because she has never looked better. She's beaten the likes of Alexa Grosso, Michelle Watterson, and Jan most recently, like you mentioned. Her 5 fight win streak may be brought to an end, will most likely be brought to an end, but she could give real trouble to Rose, especially from the mental aspect. I wonder what it would be like to fight someone you know who's beaten you.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, I feel you never like to sort of bring the mental side of things into it, but yeah, Rose has struggled with her own demons in the past, and who knows what sort of I don't know. I feel like in the past we've seen people almost have a variation of sort of PTSD when fighting people that they know have beaten them, or you also see it with younger fighters who take on veterans who they've seen fighting whilst they've been growing up. You know, the impact of fighting someone who has held a significant place in your mind for some time can definitely take an impact. But I just don't think I can look past Rose's determination, her skill. The whole package seems to be there now. Also, I believe she's 2-2 in rematches so far. She
Oh
beat
yeah.
Joanna and Andrade. Oh no, 3-3 because Weili as well, which also indicates that it probably won't be an issue. But yeah, no, I think Namajunas can win this. I think she can win it quite comfortably, in all honesty. Whereas the headline fight, no idea who's going to win that. This one, I'd say with relative certainty that Namajunas is going to win. I'm not certain how, because I don't. It depends if she decides to play Esparza at her own game. Will she engage in the wrestling and the grappling? That sort of remains to be seen. It depends on her game plan and what her and Trevor Whitman have cooked up together. But I just think, in terms of well-roundedness, skill for skill, you can't really pick against Rose Namajunas. Who are you picking?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Frank. I'm picking Rose Namajunas for this one as well. I feel like she would get this done by decision, if not a finish. My only hesitation with giving a proper outcome or a prediction is Rose has so many ways to win it. She can win it by decision. She can win it even by a knockout, even by a submission. So I just don't know which one she'll pull. It depends on Esparza, how she comes and approaches her. But yeah, I do have Namajunas winning this quite comfortably.
Yeah, even though it seems quite obvious, I feel like there's a lot of interesting aspects to this fight that yeah, you get some fights like Alexander Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie, where it was like went into that fight being like, almost don't need to see it because I just feel like I know Volkanovski's going to win this one. It's just so much better. But this one, I feel like there's a lot of interesting aspects to it that even if Rose does comfortably win, it'll be very interesting to see how she does it and how she does overcome aspects of the fight, such as Esparza's wrestling game. So yeah, it should be a good one. Rose is always fun to watch. The strawweight division in general in the UFC is exceptional. So yeah, it'll be a good one. But next we've got another lightweight fight. Michael Chandler, the former Bellator lightweight champion, stepping in and taking on former UFC interim lightweight champion Tony Ferguson, who's now on a 3-fight losing streak. It's a tough one. I mean, you got to say fair play to Tony for stepping up and taking on an opponent as dangerous as Michael Chandler. But I mean, it's hard to think that he's not shot now, isn't it? A 3-fight losing streak and has looked a shadow of the man. he once was. And you know, that's coming from a Tony Ferguson fan, someone who absolutely loves him as a fighter. Um, what's
Yeah,
your take on it? Yeah.
this one promises to be a very exciting fight. Chandler
Mm.
has brought a lot of enthusiasm with him in the division. He's given us nothing but entertaining fights. Ferguson, let me preface all my opinion with this. Ferguson has been a phenomenal athlete. He will go around as one of the best to step in the cage. But he hasn't looked the same. He just hasn't
Mm.
looked the same since Gaethje did what he did to him. He took so much damage in the fight. And credit to him for his toughness. That was a lot of punishment he took. I don't know how many people can go in there and survive that. And I don't think it's good for him either. I mean, when you look at his losses and you compare Chandler's losses, they both lost to the same guys. Both the guys they've lost to are headlining this event they're on right now. So I feel like they have nothing to be ashamed of there, you know? And I don't see that Ferguson will win this fight. The only way I feel like Ferguson might win this fight is Michael Chandler throwing caution to the wind, as we've seen him do so many times. You can't do that with Ferguson. I don't care how washed up you think he is. He's going to come in with those elbows. He's going to come in through those angles, and he's going to get you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Ferguson ends up like one. If I look at how Ferguson can win this fight, I feel like one of the more likely avenues is that he cuts up Michael Chandler so much with those elbows and those. I mean, even his like just normal strikes, everything seems designed to sort of slice and cut and wound rather than almost knock out. It's like I don't know, much more sort of reminiscent of being on like a medieval battlefield rather than in the cage. It's I wouldn't be surprised considering how um, Chandler fights as well. He'll throw himself into those engagements where he definitely can get caught by the strikes of Ferguson. It is also interesting the fact that Ferguson's last two opponents, Dariush and Oliveira, both implemented a grappling heavy approach, like entirely grappling heavy. There was essentially no striking exchanges in both those fights. And he was just out grappled by two of the best grapplers, wrestling and BJJ, in the division. So Chandler, I mean, I've watched the embedded recently, and he's mentioned that he intends on mixing it up a bit more. I think the plan was with in the Gaethje fight was to use both wrestling and striking to mix things up, and he sort of got away from that because he got into the battle, and I mean, it was a fight of a year contender, so you can't blame him. But that's the way it ended up playing out. It could be that he intends to follow that formula that's been set out by Oliveira and Dariush, and just Chandler is a high level wrestler, very high level wrestler. So is Ferguson, but I mean Chandler could well just bring him down, grind out a round or two, and win it that way. I don't think he will, but I feel like the option is there. But then if he's on his back, he's open up to those elbows of Ferguson, and Ferguson's got good submissions off his back as well. So it is an interesting fight. I just feel like Chandler's still a bit more in his prime than Ferguson. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have to lean toward Chandler, don't you?
Yeah, I agree with your analysis there, man. Especially like I remember watching the Ferguson fight with Gaethje. It was
Hmm.
so hard to watch. Even Gaethje's coach was telling him like, "Hey, you're killing him. Take some power off those shots," because he was landing so cleanly, and that was just crazy to me. They're both, of course, very dangerous on the field with their striking. Chandler does have better chances of taking it to the ground because of his wrestling background, like you mentioned. But how often do we see Chandler going for that? Almost never. And I feel like he throws caution to the wind more than he should.
Hmm.
But that's what makes him Michael Chandler. That's what makes him him. And even if it gets him in trouble, he's here to entertain, put on the best show, and be himself. And I will still back him up against Ferguson. I feel like Chandler gets this done. I don't know if he'll be able to put him to sleep, but maybe we see another stoppage reminiscent to the Gaethje one,
Hmm.
or just going to decision where he just batters Ferguson.
Yeah, yeah. I just if Ferguson does lose this one, he probably should call it a day. In all honesty, but it would be good if he gets that chance to throw down on the feet and show the striking and all the tools that he's developed over the years and what that made him such a well, it made him the UFC interim lightweight champion. Um, and one of the men who people thought, oh, maybe he's the guy that could beat Habib Nurmagomedov back in the day. That fight's never going to happen, and such a shame that it isn't. But at least let him go out doing what he does best. And who knows, if he's in that situation, maybe he'll win. Yeah, I want Tony Ferguson to win, in all honesty. But bear in mind, Chandler's on a 2-fight losing streak himself right now, having lost to both Gaethje and Oliveira. So this is quite a high stakes fight for both men, really, that they both have to win if they want. I mean, bear in mind, what is it? Chandler's 34 now, I think. So he hasn't got too much long left in the game. If he wants to fight for a belt whilst he's still in his prime, he needs to win here. And I mean, it's the exact same for Ferguson if he can win here. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I like you said earlier, my heart goes for Ferguson, but yeah, you got to pick Chandler, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
Moving down the main card, we've got two veteran old school fights. First, Ovince St. Preux versus Mauricio Shogun Hua. I mean, it's not the most sort of, well, I don't think it will be visually the most fan-friendly fight, but they are both, especially Shogun, legends of the sport. I don't know if you say OSP is a legend, but he's been in there with loads and loads of big names. John Jones. In fact, I didn't even realize this. It's a rematch with Shogun. He knocked him out. So that's another interesting facet to the fight. I lean towards St. Preux just because I think, how old is Shogun now? 40, whereas St. Preux is 39. I mean, there's not too much in between him. But I just think, looking at the fights that Shogun's been involved in lately, I can't really back him to win this one. The both fights with Paul Craig and then the split decision win over Nogueira. Plus the fact that he's been out of action, didn't fight in 2021 at all. I'm leaning towards St. Preux. What about yourself?
Yeah, Shogun, he's a legend of the sport, and this matchup is very similar to the match that comes before it, Cerrone and Lauzon. You know, they're both you were talking about high stakes fight here. What's going to happen after this? Who's going to retire, or are they both going to retire? What are they looking for? As much as I love Shogun and watching him just fight during his prime, which was about what, like a decade ago, it was amazing. But like, we have been talking about him being out of the game, fading out slowly and slowly for about 4 to 5 years at this point. Yeah, you know, let's just get him in there with Ovince St. Preux, who does seem to have more advantages when it comes to striking, when it comes to cardio, and even power. There was no way. If there was one thing that I can be sure of in this fight, is that it will not go the distance. OSP will win either by KO or submission, but it will definitely be an early finish. I just don't see Shogun having, or even OSP having, the endurance to just, you know, continue and finish the fight to decision. They are going to be looking to knock their opponent out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because yeah, you look at OSP's last two fights, both lost by TKO KO. Shogun's last two fights, I tapped the strikes against Paul Craig, of course, and then there was the decision with Nogueira. But prior to that, knockout wins and losses to Tyson Pedro, Anthony Smith, John Volante. Yeah, it's just that these are the sort of fights. If these veterans are going to be fighting, these are the sort of fights that they should be in, fighting each other, rather than the young guns or the title contenders and whatnot, just based off name value alone. No, just put these sort of fighters together, and it, you know, if they have to carry on fighting, if you know they really want to and they're still contracted, then yeah, make these sort of fights. It's always good to see Shogun in there, but well, we'll see how it plays out. The opening fight for the main card, yet another veteran fight. Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Joe Lauzon. Lauzon even. Joe's been out for a while. I'm relatively short. Yeah, 2019 was his last fight, a round one KO of Jonathan Pierce, which is pretty cool. But it's been out for a while, whereas Cerrone's kept relatively active. Although, what is that now? A 1, 2, 3, 4, nearly, well, hasn't won in his last 5 fights. There was the draw with Nico Price in there. But yeah, it probably would have been a loss for him had he not suffered eye pokes. Yeah, it was a bit dodgy that. So yeah, technically a 6-fight losing streak, which is not a great look for one of the, you know, he was he's one of those fighters who you almost can't believe he never won a UFC title. It got to that point so many times and just didn't quite make it. I'm backing him to win this one though. I think his activity, he's remained active, even though he's lost a lot of fights. He stayed training, stayed competing, and Lauzon being out for so long. I mean, that always just sort of is a big red flag to me. I feel like he's probably gonna pay for it now. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, man. Donald Cerrone, Joe Lauzon both are veterans of the game and future Hall of Famers. They both really need a win here. It could be their retirement fight, let's be honest
Yeah.
here. Like you mentioned, Lauzon hasn't fought since 2019, and Cerrone hasn't won since 2019. So that's crazy, you know? The wear and tear on their chin is evident. Cerrone has been the more active fighter, but not very successfully.
No.
So I don't know how that'll work against him, especially which we saw in the McGregor fight, right? He did open up after the fight as well, where he mentioned he talked to a sports psychologist about the mental aspect, you know? Because when you're fighting someone like McGregor, you feel like you're in a movie, you're in a script, and your role is to go out there and get your ass beat by him. Because that's how we lead that up to him. And I don't know how Cerrone will handle it mentally. And even Lauzon, they're both yeah, man, they've just taken so much damage. The wear and tear on them, but from the octagon is so evident. Cerrone isn't doing good going into the fight due to his losing streak, but Lauzon isn't doing much better. I feel like Cerrone does have better striking, but, and this is a big but, which we have seen with him recently, is that he's in the danger of getting knocked out early in the first round. So I see Lauzon coming in and trying to go for the finish in the first round. That's his best shot. If Cerrone survives that, he's going to win the fight.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of that one. So next we've got Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. I'm sure a fight that's got a lot of interest to yourself. You interviewed Randy recently for Paradigm, which well for us, but in association with Paradigm Sports, which was really interesting to get an insight into his perspective. How do you see this one playing out?
Oh man, I'm so pumped for this one. I'm even talking to Randy. I wanted to know his mindset, and he did answer some questions, but he kept his game plan to himself, which is smart for a guy like that. I do feel like I got the sense that he recognizes the danger in Chaos Williams. Chaos is definitely the harder hitter. He knocked out Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which that was his fourth career KO loss ever. Absolutely stunning. I would have not bet on Al Hassan getting knocked out there. But Randy Brown is more experienced. He's more technically sound, in my opinion, and he has the ability to outpoint him with his boxing in the fight. So I feel like that would be his best fight. But the thing about Chaos, man, with those heavy hitters, those power punchers, you don't really see them throwing a lot of punches, but that's not the case with Chaos. He likes to throw a lot of punches, and he carries his power throughout, which is so hard, man. It's just so dangerous when a guy carries his power throughout the 3 rounds. How do you see this going, Frank? Especially in terms of grappling and striking?
Yeah, isn't well, they both have a boxing or previous boxing careers behind them, haven't they? So that's a very interesting facet for me. I think Brown is a really underrated striker. I don't know. I never feel like he gets the sort of hype that he deserves. I mean, his only sort of loss in his last 5 fights is against Vicente Luque, which we all know how good he is. And the most recent win over Jared Gooden, yeah, that's the fight where his toe was broken for like the majority of it, I believe, and he still absolutely battered Gooden. Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you say Chaos carries the power, Brown sort of brings the technique. I wouldn't be surprised if Brown just goes out there and lets it play out on the feet for 5 rounds. He's got the range on him, and I think he's probably a better overall kickboxer as well, and could just outpoint Chaos as long as he can avoid that knockout power that he possesses. I mean, yeah, the most recent win for Chaos over Miguel Baeza kind of went in with that strategy to try to outpoint him and then sort of up the pressure in the final round. And like you said, Chaos carries the pressure with him into the final round. And when Baeza upped the pressure, Chaos knocked him out. It was absolutely brutal, that fight. Yeah, super interesting dynamic. Now, yeah, the sort of intriguing part of it is does Brown try to utilize his grappling, because he's a good submission artist. It was the one arm rear naked choke against Alex Oliveira was exceptional to see, and yeah, he's got a bunch more submissions on his record in the past. Triangle choke over Wally Alves, especially notable. Honestly, I think they'll keep it standing, and it'll play out that way. I think Brown is a better striker than Miguel Baeza, and his range and his ability to keep the range and use a variety of strikes in creative ways will be enough for him to piece Chaos up. I would lean towards a Randy Brown decision right now, just on account of not only does Chaos have power, but he has durability as well. He can take a punch like anyone. Yeah, Brown decision, I think, would be my prediction.
Yeah, you made a very good point, and I'd like to add to that. Against Miguel Baeza, if he can survive Baeza's shots, he's very durable. He's going to survive Randy Brown's shots. Grappling does seem like a good option on paper, but when you look at it, Brown has not landed more than one takedown in any of his fights. So I don't feel like they want to go to the ground. I agree with you. They're going to keep it striking, but it's going to be so dangerous. Brown is not as durable as Chaos. He's been finished in 3 of his 4 losses. That's tough. He needs to be very careful. You can outpoint a guy as much as you want, but he has that great equalizer, and then it's like game over for you. But still, a very competitive fight. I feel like Chaos opened up as the underdog, but now he's the favorite. So sentiments changed. Something changed. I do feel like Brown has the ability to pull off a win here. But does Brown have the power to knock down Chaos? I don't think so. He's never been knocked down. I don't think Brown is going to do that. Can he manage to avoid getting hit clean? That's the big question for me going into the fight. If he can do that, Brown wins this fight. But if he gets caught, man, it's just one of those things, Chaos will take it home.
Interesting. I think it's also worth mentioning that whilst Brown's takedown offense is not exceptional, he's very good in the clinch. I'm pretty sure I haven't rewatched it, so I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that's how the submission over Cowboy Oliveira came about, was through clinch transitions that he ends up putting him down. And he's so tall, he's ridiculously sized for the division. It's 6'3", whereas Chaos is 6 foot. And Chaos is a big welterweight, but Brown is just absolutely huge. I feel like maybe that could be an avenue for success for Brown. Pin him against the fence and use those long limbs to start wrapping up submissions, use it to utilize like clinch strikes, and maybe sap on Chaos's gas tank a little bit. Interesting fight. Interesting that you said the Brown's now the underdog. I might take a stab on that. Very interesting fight. Looking at the rest of the undercard, are there any fights on there that stand out to you?
There are a few good ones on there, but the one that does stand out to me the most, other than Macy Chiasson, Norma Dumont, would be the Brandon Royval and Matt Schnell fight. I'm very interested in that one. The opening heavyweight bout between Blagoy Ivanov and Marcos Gregorio de Lima, but I don't feel like it'll be as fan-friendly as the fight I just mentioned between Schnell and Royval. How do you see that fight going, Frank?
Royval Schnell? Yeah, I think it's the perfect pairing of chaos versus technique in a lot of ways. Royval is just mental, super unorthodox, just uncontrollable, very hard to read a lot of his shots, whereas Schnell is quite a bread and butter striker, but in the best way. There's a lot of interesting sort of facets to this game. I feel like I should have done more tape study on it, in all honesty. I like Schnell. I think he's a very good fighter. He's a bit chinny at times. He has been caught in the past. Royval hits hard, but he's so chaotic and just throws himself into the fight so much that it can leave him in compromising situations, especially in the grappling exchanges. And we've seen Schnell throw up submissions in the past, even off his back. I wouldn't be surprised if Royval throws himself into a submission triangle or something, and Schnell just locks it in. and suddenly Royval's tapping again. But simultaneously, would not be surprised if Royval knocks Schnell out in the first round easily. We've seen the way he fights. It's just ridiculous. The Kai Kara France one always stands out, just fighting through adversity to knock him down and submit him. Would not be surprised either way. But yeah, flyweights, man. It's a fun time for the flyweight division. After nearly getting cut all those years ago, it's now suddenly extremely exciting. I can't wait to watch this one. How do you see it?
I could not agree with you more, Frank. Between this fight, of like you mentioned, it's going to be an interesting matchup against technique versus brute power. Someone who believes in his right hand, someone who believes in his striking, who knows that he can go out there and get the job done. But Schnell is a good submission artist. Like you said, I can't agree with you more. I feel like Royval will go for a takedown, and that's when Schnell will see his opportunity to tap him out. So I do see him throwing himself out there like that, but at the same time, I can't count Royval out. He can knock him out. He can knock out Schnell yeah, he's more likely to knock him out in the first round, but I do feel like he can knock him out later as well.
Yeah, it's a great fight. Just looking through, it's not the most stacked undercard, but I mean, there are a lot of fighters on there who have the potential to be special in the future. I think maybe in terms of prospects, look at Tracy Cortez. She's taking on Melissa Gato, and Lupi Godinez as well, Mexican fighter who's taking on Ariane Canalosi. Those are both fighters worth keeping an eye on. According to Tapology, Andre Fialho is on the card as well, though I'm not certain if that's locked in. And of course, Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts of the UK. That's a fun one as well. It should be a great card. In all honesty, it should be great. There's so many interesting matchups on there, and it's the variety as well. I think everyone remembers when Chandler and Gaethje did fight on the opening fight of UFC 267. I can't remember, but they opened up the main card, had an amazing fight. And the next fight around is Billy Quarantillo versus Shane Burgos. And everyone, even though it's an amazing fight, everyone's burnt out by the time that comes around, because it's just, they've already had Gaethje Chandler and suddenly there's another firefight and they just haven't got the energy for it. Whereas this one, you've got pacing, you've got variety. And just, yeah, like I said at the very start, a good mix of veterans, prospects, and the cream of the crop. So yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah, and the whole card has been very well planned out. And recently, UFC has received some criticism regarding quality and quantity, that they've been putting on way more shows, but the quality hasn't been there other than the main card, kind of like what we see in boxing. Like the Fury fight recently, right? You're watching that fight only for Fury and White. You don't know who the co-main event is. You don't care who the co-main event is about their opponent. All those tickets were sold by Fury's name. UFC 274, Frank, is one of those fights where it's stacked to the brim with veterans, rising prospects, exciting fights, everything that we want to see. So if anyone criticizes UFC for not putting up quality events, well, here you go, mate. You can't say that now.
Well said, mate. I think that's a good place to call into this podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on, Nikhil. Really interesting, and it's just made me even more excited for this event now. Tell people where to find you on social media and whatnot. Give you a follow.
Yes, Frank, it's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have this breakdown with you. People can follow me on Twitter at Nikhil Sharma MMA.
Awesome.
How about you?
Yeah, same for me. Frank Bonada on Twitter, Instagram, all those socials. And go give LowKick MMA a follow as well. We've always got great news, exclusives, all sorts coming out nonstop from both myself, Nikhil, and the rest of the team. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back for probably UFC 275.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.